All right, thank you for joining in this video. Today we're going to be looking at 5 critical and essential Nmap skills that you need to have if you want to go into pen testing or something along those lines. So let's go off and dive into it. We're going to start off with find things on the network and on the internet. So once you get into Nmap, one of the first things you're going to be doing if you were to go out and get a job doing pen testing or something like that is you're going to be finding things, whether that be on the internet or on your local network. Being able to do discovery and find devices is an important skill. So for example, my network here is 172.1678. That's the network. Here's my IP. So if I wanted to do discovery on my network, and you can practice this on your home network. All right, and I'm just saying 0/24, which is just a short way to do this, right? I can say 255.255.255.0, or because each one of these octets represents 8 bits with the 255, the shorthand way to write it is with the /24, like so. So the type of scan I'm going to be doing is a ping scan or discovery scan. This is called network discovery. So I'm going to give it the SN flag to do that. I'm going to output it to a greppable format, and we're going to call this discovery. And if you're doing this on your own home network, this output file is just going to have a list of the things that it found in your network. So now if I look at discovery, you see it's got it formatted really nicely like that. So that is the basis of how you find things with Nmap on your network or on the internet, because you could give it an internet range and it would still scan and do a ping scan and try to look for these things. All right, so let's move on to the next thing, which is going to be actually identifying open ports on devices. Now in this skill, we're going to be looking at how to find open ports on devices. Let's go ahead and do it. So we've got our list here, and what we're going to do is we're going to focus on a device sitting at 144. It's a device that's got a lot of services on it, so we'll let that serve as kind of our test for this. So now we're just going to use Nmap again. Remember, we're going to focus on 144, and this time we're going to tell it to give us a list of open ports. Now before we did an SN scan to do a ping scan, we're going to not give Nmap that option, so that means it's going to default to a port scan. By the way, when you're running as root like I am, it's going to default to a SYN stealth scan, but if you don't have root privilege, it's going to default to what we call a TCP connect scan. And in a later series, I'll go into deep details about what the differences are. So we're going to go ahead and scan that device, and what it's doing now is it's trying to connect to the 1,000 most commonly used ports across the entire 65,535 range. If you wanted it to do more, all of the ports, you could give it the flag, the -P flag, and tell it to do 1 through 65,535. Or if you wanted to do fewer ports, you could give it the ports you wanted it to scan. Or you could use a -F flag to make it scan the 100 most common ports. All right, and as you can see here, it shows us all these ports are open. So now that's how you use it to basically give you a listing of open ports. By default, Nmap does a port scan, so you don't really have to know a lot to make it do a port scan, right? So next, we're going to be moving into how to use it to identify services. All right, so we're going to move into looking at how to do this skill, which is basically identifying services and versions. So let's move on. So now that we've done the scan for identifying the open ports, let's look at how to dig deeper and find out what service is running on that port. For example, we can see that port 80 is open. We assume that's some type of web service, but let's go ahead and dig deeper and find out exactly what that web service is. The most common Nmap scan to do that is the version probe, which is an SV scan. So I'm simply going to give it an SV for port 80 so that we can see what's running there, because if we just did port 80 by itself without any other flags, Nmap is just going to repeat what it gave us in the previous scan, which is just telling us that yes, port 80 is open. But we want to know what's actually running there. Hence, we're going to use the SV flag. And then it's going to give us more detail. It's going to say, yes, there is something running there. It is a web service, and here's the specific version of the web service that's running there. So if it's Apache, it would tell me that. If it's IIS, it's going to tell me that. But either way, the next step from a pen testing standpoint is now you can use this version information that we see here and actually go and find out vulnerabilities related to that service, and then you're off to trying to exploit that service at that point. So that's how you do a version probe scan, and that is a critical, essential skill that you need to have if you're going to go into pen testing with using Nmap. All right, skill 4. You got to get into and start using NSC scripts. They're just going to make a lot of things easier for you and make you able to get the right information in a more efficient way and in a faster way. So let's go ahead and look at some basic usage of NSC scripts. I'm just going to show you a couple examples. So I'm going to use some built-in NSC scripts here to do some very basic things. So first thing is I will do HTTP enumeration. So I'm going to specify port 80, and then I'm going to invoke the NSC script for HTTP enumeration, and that's just HTTP-enum. And you'll see that it actually comes back and gives us some pretty decent information about the web service that's running there. All right. So it gives us some things about the directories. It found this login page here. It also found a folder that it's able to get into. So this would be something that we might take a deeper look at if we were doing an actual pen test. Another enumeration thing that I want to look at is SNMP. So let me show you how that works. I'm just going to call the SNMP brute force script. And this is useful for just doing a quick check of all your devices to make sure that they don't have any default SNMP community strings enabled. And when I run this against that device, let's actually change it up a little bit here. So I'm going to change the port to 161, which is a common port for SNMP. And since SNMP utilizes UDP, I'm going to actually go and change it and force Nmap to do what we call a UDP scan. Now keep in mind, if you don't have root privilege, you will have to give it sudo or something like that for you to be able to do this type of scan. So let's go ahead and execute that. And you will see that it'll come back and tell us, hey, I was able to authenticate to the SNMP service. And it says, look, these credentials right here gave me access. So now we know that this device is vulnerable to some type of SNMP attack with these two community strings there. All right. And that's kind of a look at how you can utilize the NSC scripts. These are just two quick examples. So spend some time, dig into it, or go look at the skill session that we have on this if you want to go more into it. So we're going to move into the last and the fifth skill here, which is essentially writing your own little basic scripts to automate some of the things that you might do with Nmap. So let's jump into that. So now we're going to look at automating with scripting, and you can pick any scripting language, Perl, Python, whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to just use Bash because it's right here. And everybody that's got Kali or something like that should have pretty easy access to it. So let's jump into it. All right, so let's do some automation. So what if I said, take the list that you found in the beginning, because we created a file named discovery. If I said find, all the devices that are on the network, and then scan each device to see which ones have port 80 open and give me a list of those. Well, we could do that by doing a discovery scan first, then taking that and then scanning each IP individually to see if it's got port 80 open, and then manually creating a list that's got, of the ones that's got port 80 open. But let's see if we can automate that. All right, and I'm just going to use basic bash here. We'll just call it dis.sh. Okay, so I'm first going to tell the script to run Nmap against the range. Maybe in a later series, I'll show you how to make this a variable so you can enter the range at runtime. And we're going to do an SN scan, which is a ping scan. We're going to write the results to a greppable file named, let's call it list. All right, then we're going to cat that list file. Now, what that's going to do for us, all right, let's just look at what the results look like. We'll use the discovery file. So if we look at the discovery file here, the reason I'm catting it is if I cat that file, I can then grep for up, right, and get just that. And then I can further take that and awk it and then simply print fill 2 which would give me just the IPs, right? So writing that to a list would give me a list of just IPs. So let's create a list, because then we're going to use that list and import it to Nmap. So now I'm going to cat list, same thing. I'm going to grep for up, which is going to give me, just the devices that came back. Then I'm going to pipe that to awk. I'm going to print field 2 like we just saw in the example there. And then I'm going to write the results of that to a file. We'll call it list1. All right. So that should give me a list of IPs that are up. But what we want to do is we want to scan that list. So I'm going to use the input list option from Nmap, scan list1. We're only looking for web service. So we're going to assume port 80. It could be 443 or whatever, but just show you an example here. So we're going to do port 80. So if I go ahead and say scan port 80, output the results to a greppable file named web servers or something like that. All right, that's going to give me a list of web servers. It's going to show me the web servers and what their status and all that good stuff is. So now what we could do is I could cat that list, right? Let's go look and see what it would look like, right? So if we did take the discovery list, all right, and then we said scan it, but only scan for port 80, output it to a greppable file name. We'll just call this WS. Let's do this. All right, so this is our list of IPs. What it's going to give us here is just the port scan of port 80 of all the IPs that are in that list. And then we're going to take that and look and see what that format looks like. And a big part of you getting to where you can automate these things is you have to take your time and understand what the output from Nmap looks like. And then once you have that down to a science, then you can move to something like this and start automating it. So if we look at the resultant output file, which is WS, it looks like that. The only ones that we care about are ones that say open. So we could do this. We could cat it, and then we could grep for, this time, open. Right, and that gives us that list. And then the next part, we want to pull out of that list just the ones that say open, which is field 2. So we're going to do that again. Which would basically give us that, right? So now that you've seen the output manually, we can take that and incorporate it into our little script. So we go over and look at the resulting file, which is going to be web servers. So we're going to cat web servers. We're going to grep for open. All right, then we're going to take that. We're going to send it to awk. And we're going to print field 2 from that, and we'll name it something like final list. Okay, and then at the end of it, we've got the list. All we need to do is come up with a way to show it. So we could just say echo and make it say something like, here are your web servers, and then just say cat final list. Right? So that should do it. So let's go ahead and close that out. Let's go ahead and run that script. And what generally should happen is it should come back at the end when it's finished doing all the things that we just put in and give us a nice list of just the web servers with the message on the screen saying, here are your web servers. So let's see if it's successful in doing that. So you can see it completed the first part of the scan. All right, and you can see it's actually starting the second scan now. And it's done. And as expected, it does print out at the bottom here. Here are your web servers. So it actually does give us the desired result there. So, we'll build on this at some other point and make the script more and more complex. And then we'll maybe move into Python, something that's a little more suited for taking different kinds of output. But that's the basics of how you do you move into starting to automate, what you're doing with Nmap. So thanks for watching this series. Hope to see you again in another video when we look at another tool.